can a person be too transparent?
I'm going to say filter, but don't filter to deceit. Don't filter to the point where there are trust issues.
Some couples, they could talk about it all. And some couples, maybe not so much. I think the most important thing is just to know what couple you are.
Stop oversharing. Your partner, your lover, your husband or wife or whatever, but they're not your therapist, and they're not your savior, and they're not your God. My next thing I want to talk about is this Japanese study that they took, I think, 40 years. I think they studied like 800 some couple. It took 40 years, at least 40 years, maybe more. They studied couples to figure out what made a couple last, right? Kind of what we're talking about right now. And what they found out was that the couples that lasted the longest did not do one thing. They did not overshare. They did not share like their deepest, darkest secrets and show who they really are and share all the thoughts they have that cross their mind. They kept that stuff to themselves. They did not turn their partner into their therapist or their pseudo best friend. I could just tell everything to. They did not do that. They kept some boundaries. They kept some lines between themselves and their innermost thought, right? And when they did that, surprisingly enough, contrary to Hollywood, it looks like their marriages lasted longer. So what I wanted to ask you was, can a person be too transparent? You know, we kind of talked about something like this similar, but we really didn't dig deep. And I'll tell you about how I feel about it afterwards, because I think I might be a flip-flopper on this issue, to be totally honest. But the other question I had was, what are some of the things that couples shouldn't share? Right? If you could overshare, what are some of these things that people are guilty of oversharing that they probably shouldn't have? I think there's probably some common mistakes. And is it a trust thing, or is it just emotional dumping? Are we sharing our innermost selves with the person we trust the most? Or are we just finally locking in on somebody who has to listen?
So I'm actually going to agree that with this study, and the reason why I'm agreeing with it is simple. I think that some things are just too much, right? I think, and to be precise, let's use myself as an example. I learned early on that I was too transparent. There is such a thing as being too transparent, and it did not bode well for the relationship, to the point where I was told, "Hey, you don't have to tell me everything." And it wasn't that I was emotionally dumping on the person. It was just that at the time, I didn't necessarily, I got married really young, and I grew up where it was like, you should be able to tell your husband anything. So I didn't have a filter. And it turns out the lack of filter was too much. And so it was like, I had to learn how to filter myself down so that I'm not being too transparent into my thought process, because sometimes the things that one can share is actually hurtful sometimes, right? The things that one can share, we're not recognizing what the reaction, or not even that, not necessarily the reaction, but how that may affect our partner emotional state of mind as well. Because sometimes there are some things that he or she may not be able to handle simply because it's outside their bailiwick, as they call it, aka they're not your therapist. And so a lot of that childhood dumping of information, or even teenage, in my case, dumping of information, or other things that may not necessarily, like something that's going on in life, may not necessarily be something that they're capable to deal with. So you actually need to find a balance between being emotionally available and transparent, because not all truths need to be delivered all at once. Some truths need to be held in that back pocket and may not have to come out at all. And so oversharing becomes unhealthy when it replaces the problem-solving capabilities that come from either the communication process or the partnership process, right? Or from your own individual ability to problem solve. So as a woman, and then recognizing men's nature, and I'm putting quotation, for some of that toxic accountability there, quotation marks. Men in general, when women come to men with issues and problems, or even if we're just venting, the man's first thought is, well, how can I solve this? What can I do to solve this? And when the woman is just coming to vent, then it becomes, why did you waste my time with this information? Because you really didn't want any help. And why do I have to listen to this? Because I'm not here to gossip like we're girlfriends. And so unless you want me to solve the issue, then why are we talking about it? Unless you preface it and say, hey, I just wanted to vent about something that happened to me today, and then determine the level of venting that's needed for that particular situation. Because ultimately, men don't care about certain things. Not the same way that women care when they're talking to their girlfriends. And so I can actually see this study and taking place like that. Just like sometimes on the man's side, if And this is unfortunate that sometimes we discover that when men vent to women, the women themselves, because we've been living in this society with these so-called traditional gender roles and stereotypes as far as stoic and so forth, when men share information, sometimes the women may weaponize that and look at it as, oh, you've been like and it may actually be a turnoff factor because, like, well, why are you telling me? Like, shouldn't you just go handle it? And some women aren't actually emotionally equipped to handle when men come to them with their issues because they're not used to it. They're like, oh, I thought you got this. You're supposed to be the man. You're supposed to handle this. You're supposed to be this. You're supposed to be that. This is what a real man would do. I hate that phrase, the real man. And so I can see it not lasting. I support this study 100%. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say filter, but don't filter to deceit, right? Don't filter to the point that you lack communication. Don't filter to the point where there are trust issues. And one of the things that I would say that you should not share unless you've already determined that your man can handle it or your woman can handle it is if you're attracted to somebody else because they may not be able to handle that unless they're within that lifestyle or they were already looking at that type of lifestyle. It does not work out to your benefit because, as a matter of fact, they may think you're probably about to cheat on them because you don't mention somebody was attracted to somebody, or you may talk too much about a certain person. All of a sudden, it's like, huh, they bring this person up a show lot, huh? So some things you need to keep in the tuck. You don't have to tell everything. And there's other things that I also would recommend you not talk about. But I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder, so I'm gonna let it slide for now.
Oh, okay. Look at you leaving thunder on the table for everybody else. That is so thoughtful of you, S&M. I mean, okay, it's gonna be 2 for 2 at least at this point. I think it might have been a couple of shows ago. I do feel like there's a wave where people are expecting to. Well, let me back up. We live in a social media age where people are giving their thoughts all the fucking time. Like, what are you eating? What are you thinking? I remember thinking that like when Facebook first came out. So what I'm saying is that like we are in a oversharing culture anyway is what I'm saying. I feel like the default is oversharing. Like we don't really care what you're eating, ma'am, right? Or that you're enjoying yourself, sir. I mean, maybe some people care in your circle, but what I'm saying is that the culture lends towards everybody oversharing, right? Or you should be able to overshare. Accept me as I am. All that kind of conversation, right? And I do think it is hurting relationships because it kind of goes back to boundaries a little bit if you think about it, right? Like you should be able to know your partner well enough. You should hopefully maybe be able to know yourself well enough in terms of what things you should be able to share and not share. Because I feel like if your partner is not a psychologist and you're having suicidal thoughts, yes, it's important to maybe share that with your partner, but your partner is not going to be your therapist, right? The best they can do is try to get you to somebody who can help you. There's expectations for people to show up as everything. Maybe that's the conversation that we were having before, where I felt like it's crazy that people expect their partners to show up as everything. I was on Clubhouse a couple of days ago. The guy was still talking about how like he doesn't do therapy. Like, why would you need to go to therapy? Which means that if both of you feel this way, then you guys are now each other's therapists, right? Like, where else would you go for guidance necessarily? Right? We don't treat medicine that way, but there's certain things that we certainly treat with a certain level of disregard for because we expect people to be everything, and that's just not true. So this is easily a yes for me. It makes sense. I'm surprised they need a study to agree with this, because I just think that people aren't built for everything, and we have to be okay with that. You know what I mean? Some people just emotionally are not going to be able to deal with certain things. And you have to know that when you're getting with your person. You get what I'm saying? Like I would, and I do understand. Like for me, I would like to think that I can communicate as much as I want with my wife, right? Because there's a certain level of trust there. So for me, I do think we should be able to trust that what I tell you would not be used against me. What I tell you will be used in such a way that's productive and not destructive, right? And I do think a lot of people may not have that. But I also think some people are emotionally dumping, bro. Like I see it a lot in friendships. Like you'll be like, you're in a relationship where the other person is constantly just telling you about their shit, but they'll ask you about yours kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? To me, that's emotional dumping kind of. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one thing to be there for your friend, y'all chopping it up. But if that person is constantly backing up their truck of bullshit that you got to deal with, and there's no sense of reciprocity there, yeah, I'm good on that. You know what I mean? So, but what each couple should or should not, it's up to them. 'Cause I mean, I've some couples they could talk about it all. And some couples, maybe not so much. I think the most important thing is just to know what couple you are. That's where the disconnect comes, right? Some of y'all think you're in a relationship that you're not in. And what evidence do you have that you're in that relationship, right? So you either have to acknowledge that you're not in that, right? Some of y'all be in delusion, you know what I mean? And work to fix it if you're not satisfied with it. But honestly, yeah, I think that I would say the problem, yeah, I was gonna say is undersharing, but nah, it's a mixture of both. I was gonna say I don't know which one's a bigger problem, but yeah, definitely oversharing has become a bigger problem because too many of y'all tell us your business and we don't care, even the nigga you with. Go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
No, I think you
You
both
don't care
made
either.
great points. You you both had great points. I think that all right. So in order, I do think oversharing is a thing. I have in the past, I've been a big proponent of cards up, just speak your truth, live your truth. You know what I'm saying? Say where it is, just claim it, da 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 da. I have lived long enough to understand, right? That everybody's not able to hold space within their mind for all of another person, right? Especially while they're trying to figure out how they can interact with that person. And I do understand also it's motivated by our desire to be known, right? Because we want to be loved, right? But we don't know if we can be loved until we're known. So we want to find somebody who really knows us so they can look at us and go, "Oh, I really see you for who you are." Like, I see you you're naked to me emotionally, you're naked to me mentally, you're naked to me physically. I see you and I appreciate all of it. We want that. We dream of that, right? But like I think Nick, you were saying, it's about there's an issue of boundaries, right? My need to express myself can't be so grand that it drowns out my partner's need to feel a certain way about their environment. So oversharing is definitely a thing, but I do think you should share as much as possible in a certain time frame. I think you should do it in the beginning. Here's my thought. Y'all can push back, but this is my thought. Overshare in the beginning before they give you a title, but you know they feeling you. Whatever you're going to share, right? That you just like, I need her to know who I am. That's the time when the stuff that you've accepted about yourself that you know is about you. I think that's the time that you want to share. Okay. I think for the rest of the relationship, as if somebody slaps a title on you, they're telling you that I accept what you have presented to me and it is worth X to me. Okay. And they might even that title could be marriage, could be boyfriend, could be girlfriend, whatever. Right. They say, okay, I accept it. And I'm willing to put this title on that thing. That works for me. That doesn't mean you can continue to develop new things on. Now, in a great relationship, you could, but everybody's not built for that. Some people are only built to hold what they banked on in the beginning. And the more you tell them every little thing that you're thinking or every little way that your mind might be going, they can't keep up. Right? They're not along for that ride. Sometimes the only person we're going to find to love us unconditionally and love all of us is God. It's just him. Okay, some stuff you can only tell God. You just can't tell your partner. Your partner don't want to know it. They don't know where to put it. They don't know how to deal with it. Right? They don't want to factor in what they might not want to be the partner of somebody who is developing, growing the way you're growing, or having it, or whatever your issue is. Right? And the worst part is sometimes, if we're being honest, male or female, we go through what you're going through is temporary. You like, I'm gonna quit my job today, and I'm so this, I'm so that, and you know that you're having a bad day your spouse might not need to hear that every day. They're gonna think you're not a person who can't keep a job, right? Or oh, every time I see your little cousin, I want to punch him in the face. Yeah, listen, you can feel that way, but maybe you don't want to share that all the time. You know what I mean? Maybe it might make them think their family members aren't safe around you. So, in terms of what you don't share when you overshare, you don't share things, okay, that will redefine your partner's understanding of you until you're sure those things are really you and you're just gonna be there regardless, right? Then you share it. If you're like, oh, I've suddenly decided I want to change our religion. Okay, when you first thinking about it, maybe I don't know if you should share that right then. Now, right before you join the church, maybe you bring it up. So I think there's a time and the space for it. I'm not a big fan of like S&M says, you know, don't undershare to the point of deceit, right? But there's nobody who is either entitled to or probably equipped to hear and understand every thought, every whim, every emotion, every twist and turn your mind might take you. Okay, some of this stuff you just got to process on your own or go get a therapist, right? Y'all go. Matter of fact, here's my last thing, and I'll land on this. If you have reached a point where you are ready to start sharing new stuff with your partner, your spouse, okay, that they might not be braced for. Then I suggest you get a therapist and you open the space for us to start talking about new things. Right? That's probably my best suggestion for you to do that. Do not do it on your own. Do not just dump on them and go, well, you're supposed to love me regardless. And you supposed to, because people aren't built like that. They understood uh, a space that you took up in their reality. It had dimension. When you change that dimension, when you change the volume of the space that you take up in certain areas of their lives or certain stances that you might take, it's wrong to expect there won't be a shift somewhere else. Something's got to make room. So please, people, stop oversharing. Your partner, your lover, it may even be your best friend, your husband or wife or whatever, but they're not your therapist, and they're not your savior, and they're not your God. And the only person that's going to understand everything about you is whoever made you. Everybody else is figuring it out as you figure it out.